Oh, here comes a sick one.
Ronnie and Ford breaking things down. We're all washed up on the whole down.
Welcome to another episode of The Hold Down. I'm your host, Ronnie Blakey. Sitting next to me is a man that has been contributing to the world's biggest surf publications for over 25 years. He's also served me plenty of drop-ins. It's my big brother, Vaughan. How are you, Vaughan?
Love dropping in on you, Ron. Have a good look at that caboose next time you're behind me.
All right, today we've got a very special episode for you. We're going to be having a look at monumental moments in big wave surfing.
Big wave surfing, Ron, as you know and as any surfer out there knows, it's the first real challenge you face in your life that you actually choose to engage with. It's the first time that you really have to face your fears, whether it's because of your mates getting out there first or because you just want to get out there and challenge yourself. It's something we can all relate to. And mate, if there's one thing I know about big waves, it's that I'm still terrified of them.
Oh, for sure. But one thing is for certain. People love watching big waves. You go to the cinema and you watch your favourite movie unfold. It's always the big waves, always the big wipeouts that get the biggest cheers from the crowd.
So true. And I mean, if you're looking at any sort of motorbike racing as an analogy.
An analogy.
You know, it's the guys who are jumping buses who really capture the public's attention rather than guys racing around in circles. So there's always going to be a place for big wave surfing. And it's always one of those things that everyone connects with instantly, mostly because it's just so spectacular.
When you think about the progression and the evolution of surfing, it seems like in the big wave realm, that's where there's rapid momentum happening. That seems to be where the limits are being pushed most.
Absolutely. I think in the past, big wave surfing was wrapped up in this mythology. It was almost this spiritual pursuit, just for a small few. In the years that have gone by, probably since the early 60s, we've seen sort of slow and steady progression. I remember when a guy named Brock Little, the late great Brock Little, got barreled at Waimea. It was the biggest story in the world. It had covers, it was everywhere. Now we're seeing things like that on a daily basis. Every single time a giant purple blob turns up on the weather maps, there is hundreds of lunatics just chucking in everything to get there and surf it. And what that means is we're just seeing rapid progression, and it's really interesting to see where big wave surfing is going to go from here.
Well, let's see some of these loonies throwing themselves into the moor on some of the biggest waves that we've ever seen. This is our number 5. Break a leg, are you kidding me? Justin Holland, the Aussie tradesman, the maniac, throwing himself over the ledge on an absolute bomb, maybe the biggest wave ever ridden in Australia.
This is crazy. This made national news headlines. It was in every paper, it was on the news. This guy, just a good old-fashioned chippy. He does have a few, strings to his bow though. He's a champion paddleboarder, he's best mates with Jamie Mitchell. He knows how to handle himself in the big gear. But mate, he took on this swell, just chucked everything in, went over there last minute to, the crazy West Coast and took on one of the greatest waves ever surfed and really copped it badly because the wave bounced right onto his leg, snapped it like a twig. Next thing, all hell's breaking loose.
He had an okay session in the lead up to that moment though. He'd ridden about 6 or 8 waves, had some pretty good fun out there, if you can call it that, before he spotted this wave, this slab of open ocean. And it's such a scary kind of tricky wave, just trying to find your place. And I think that's where he got caught out, just a little bit out of position.
That's right. This wave breaks a long, long way out to sea. We won't say where it is because it actually, believe it or not, big wave surfers still care about the blowing out of their spots, if you can believe that. But being that far out to sea, lining up, finding your marks, being in the right place at the right time becomes a whole different challenge. And I think really what happened was this thing might have just been way bigger than any other wave that broke that day. So he was probably in a pretty good spot, but just trying to outrace it and get to the bottom and beat that crazy avalanche of whitewash, that proved to be the challenge.
I'm going to be sweet to sail, I reckon. It feels like I'm good.
That is such a scary thought, isn't it? That you're going that fast, you have all that speed, and yet you still can't outrun this wave. That just goes to show how fast these big swells are moving.
Exactly, mate. And that's why the ski exists. In recent years, we've seen paddleboarding start to crawl back as, a place where the real core men want to be. But some waves are just too big and too fast to paddle into. That's why you need the ski. If you're not going fast enough on the ski, you know you're on a big one.
Definitely seems though that there is a danger element to surfing big waves when your feet are strapped in, because in that situation his feet weren't moving. And so if the wave hits you, your feet don't necessarily just get blasted off the board, they're kind of stuck there and whammo.
Mate, that's really just another one of the factors. I mean, take away the sharky water that you're surfing in over there, the open ocean swell, the removal from like any sort of help. It's a long way to the nearest, person who can help you and pull you out of trouble if everything goes wrong.
Unbelievable stuff. Lucky he was able to be dragged away from that horrific wipeout with his leg dangling behind him, and he's back to his best. Good on you, Justin. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we've got more big moments coming your way on the Hold Down.
We're all washed up on the hold down.
Oh, here comes a sick one.
Ronnie and Paul breaking things down. We're all washed up on the hold down.
Welcome back to the Hold Down. Today on the show, we're running through 5 of the heaviest moments in big wave surfing. Some of them here in Australia, a lot of them overseas, but we got another banger for you now. Jamie Mitchell, who we just saw pluck his best friend out of trouble over there in West Oz, is one of the most revered big wave surfers on the planet, and he comes in at number 4 on our list.
Anywhere, anytime, any size. This is the world that Jamie Mitchell lives in. A guy who had actually made a name for himself paddling. That was his big gig, wasn't it? He was paddled between Molokai and Oahu every year for 10 years straight, won them all. And then out of nowhere, he went, right, I'm going to change my focus. And I reckon there was probably athletes in all sorts of sports all over the world going, oh, I hope he doesn't pick my sport. He picked big wave surfing, and of course, he started to achieve straight away, Ronnie.
He had that amazing victory over in Portugal, but I think the measure of any big wave surfer is really when you look at their highlight reel of the biggest waves that they've ridden, and Jamie's had some monsters.
Man, oh man, I mean, there's ones that come to mind, Nazaré, there's Belhara, there's Jaws, there's just every big wave spot in the entire world he has got a highlight from. He just puts his mind to it and wants it so bad and will do anything to get there.
The wave that I want to talk about though, Vaughan, was the one that he surfed at Belhara in the southwest of France, this offshore reef break. He took it on with Shane Dorian and Benjamin Sanchez. Shane Dorian, who is one of the, probably regarded as the best big wave surfer of all time at this point, he was throwing it out there. This wave was 60 feet.
When I first locked eyes on this thing, I only thought one thing.
Are you joking?
It was just
So big.
And I'm not surprised Shane Dorian was freaking on that, because he doesn't even get more than halfway down the face. But gee whiz, he packed it.
Mate, look, I've got to give you props. You've got a pretty decent set of cojones. And I've seen you paddle into some pretty decent waves, but could you imagine what he was looking at paddling into this wave at Belhara, what he was looking down at?
No,
it's like standing on top of a house.
Yeah, 5 houses on top of each other. It's just to have the gumption to turn around and paddle into a wave that big. I mean, this was right when paddle started to claw back at the ground that jet skis had put between them and the paddle. Like, so this is the gap. They've been going for a few years, and all of a sudden Shane Dorian and all the paddle guys started closing this gap right up. This was the start of it, and it really opened everyone's mind to just what the paddle guys were capable of doing if they had the muscle. And man, oh man, Jamie had the muscle. He also had the figs.
But he didn't make it.
No, but it doesn't matter, does it?
I don't know, does it?
No, I don't know. No. Jamie Mitchell, I know for a fact, I spoke to him after that wave. He was gutted he didn't make it. He just thought a few readjustments, he was already doing the maths in his head about that wave again. Next time the swell gets big, you know he's going to make it.
Always great to check in with Jamie Mitchell, but let's jump from the frigid waters of the southwest of France now to the tropical waters over there in Nias for one hell of a session. This is our number 3. Nias lights up like never before. This is one of the most ideal locations on the surfing planet, and yet at this size, it just looked horrific to me.
The craziest thing about Nias is that for so long, it occupied this space in surfers' brains as the perfect wave. Something so remote, so removed, took an age to get there, and when you got there, you were just going to get rewarded with these gorgeous, beautiful, oval-shaped overhead barrels lined with palm trees. You know, it was the idyllic setting. And then, all of a sudden, we saw a giant nightmare scenario play out with a big earthquake throughout Indonesia, which actually changed the topography of the entire planet around that region. And Nias, the reef, actually rose about 1 metre, and it changed the whole dynamic of the wave run. It went from this dreamy thing to when the swell starts getting really big, doubling up, angry, throaty, spitting barrels that were really for a certain type of surfer, not just everyone.
And that's what attracted a certain group of surfers on a recent swell. In 2018, something special was lighting up. You know, you look at those swell charts and watch those animations online, and when you see those big purple blobs moving around the Great Southern Ocean, that's when you start to see Indo really fire.
Oh mate, if I'm on a holiday in Indo and I see Carl Rothman turn up, I'm booking a plane home because I don't want to be there for whatever's coming. Imagine you're sitting there at Nias with your buddies, you've booked your holiday, and all of a sudden you see Carl Rothman turn up, you see Reef McIntosh turn up, you see Laurie Towner turn up, you see guys you're just going, nah, I don't want a piece of this, I'm gone.
Boats were getting annihilated. There was that classic vision of that fishing boat just getting sucked into the impact zone and hammered over the falls.
Mate, all I was thinking was, where's the little driver sitting up the back with his goodang hanging out and a bintang in one hand, just putting up the face? Thankfully, there was no one in the boat.
Three down, 2 to go on the hole down. This is our big wave special. Don't go anywhere. More to come after the break.
We're all washed up on the whole game.
Oh, here comes a sick one.
Ronnie and Paul breaking things down. We're all washed up on the whole game.
Welcome back to the show, folks. We are bringing you a very special edition of the Hole Down today as we run through some of the best big wave moments in the history of the sport. It's kind of modern history, though, the way that big wave surfing has evolved. We've seen Justin Holland, we've checked Jamie Mitchell, the mega swell in Nias. It's time to check out what's sitting at number 2.
Huge, scary, awful, green, black, scary, red, chopu. No thanks.
Code red, code black. It should have been
Code
called
brown.
should have been called code brown. Most waves, you get a big swell, the waves move a little further out. All that energy in those huge swells just absolutely pounds and slurps and gargles on that reef.
Oh, Christ, sounds awful, doesn't it? This was toe only. It was so big, so scary, and even the guys who were some of the best surfers in the world weren't ready for it. And that was when the toe guys really started to say, okay, this is a realm that we can take over.
The crazy thing about that code red swell is there wasn't a whole lot of waves made considering how many waves were ridden. It was just semi-unsurfable, and still guys were throwing themselves into it.
It's a classic thing with surfing, isn't it? When you paddle out as a grommet with your mates on a big day, it doesn't matter if the wave is a good wave or not. It's almost like, you're going, which is like, you know, in this day and age, peer group pressure is a huge problem. No one wants to see it. But for some reason, you just pack it on those days and you end up learning a lot about yourself, a lot about what you're capable of doing, and it does push you through. So you've got to find that little balance of, like, you know, getting charged up on what your mates are doing, but also making the right decision so you don't put yourself in danger. On this day, it did feel like the boys were just out there putting on basically an educational clinic. How are we going to ride these waves in future? Will one of them open up for me? Will I get the glory hole and maybe a big check at the end of the year? All those questions were going down. Only a handful of rides got made, but still one of the most spectacular days of surfing ever.
Stick around, after the break, we'll unveil our number one on the hold down. Stay with us.
Down, we're all washed up on the hold down.
Oh, here comes a sick one.
Ronnie and Ford breaking things down. We're all washed up on the hold down.
Welcome back to the hold down. Ronnie here with Vaughan. Today we've been running through amazing big wave moments, but we still have one to uncover. Here it is. Giant Fiji. Massive swells unloading at one of the world's best reef breaks. Vaughan, it's been mind-blowing.
It has been probably the greatest thing that has happened to big wave surfing. I'm not joking, it is so out of this world that waves that big can be that perfect for that distance. Because if you think back to big wave surfing, the Makaha days, the Waimea days, you're just looking at a big old drop, hang in there, get off the bottom, maybe make it to shore, job done. Cloudbreak is a whole different ball game, mate. You are literally surfing. You are surfing those waves, coming off the bottom, driving down the reef, getting barreled and just trying to, negotiate just miles of open ocean face. It has to be one of the best big waves in the world, hands down.
There was a little bit of debate about what should feature at number one. We had the code red swells in Tahiti. I was pushing for that, but you were actually in the lineup that first year that Fiji finalled. In fact, you almost got the wave of the century on the head. How was that?
Oh, mate, it was pretty damn scary. It was like watching it all day long, and it was just hours of perfection. Huge 40-foot perfection. And Mark Healy was out there, and I said to him, like, what do you think, mate? Is it worth paddling out? Do you think I'll be all right out there? And he goes, yeah, no worries. I don't know why I believed him. He's a maniac. So I jumped overboard on a borrowed board, and sure enough, 3 minutes later, one of the biggest sets in history broke. And I don't know if you've seen the footage, Ronnie, but you can dead set see my feet kicking like an outboard motor. At least 400 horsepower too, just gunning it, trying to get over this thing that, to me, looked like the Grand Canyon coming at me. It was huge. I mean, I can't understate the size and the power of that water when you're moving and paddling up the face. You just keep going and going and going.
One of the crazy things I heard from that session, and that wave in particular, is that after the wave broke, there was just suddenly this kind of stank out there in the lineup because the wave, with so much power, churned up and broke off pieces of reef, and there was basically fish life just kind of detonated there on the surface.
I actually came up with that rumour, Ron, because the true source of the stank wasn't the reef poo at all. Who'd have known that a few years later we'd get another swell where that one wave in that one set was actually just one of many?
Let's get on to 2018 because another monster Fiji swell hits. Of course, there's an absolute band of just the most incredible big wave riders there to take it on. And this time, it felt like that wave didn't go unridden.
That's right. I think big wave surfers who were there in 2012 would have lost sleep for, close to 5 years over not being able to ride that wave. This time, they were there, they were ready, and we saw multiple rides on waves like that one. Still don't know if we saw one that quite did what that wave did in terms of just how wide it threw, but certainly waves as tall. I personally thought, looking at the footage and comparing the two swells, that this 2018 swell was much bigger. It just seems like Ramon Navarro's wave, Makua Rothman's waves, they were just so big. The standout performers were definitely guys that you almost expected, with one or two guys really bringing a new fury. So we had guys like Ramon Navarro, Cole Christensen. These guys have really set the bar for toe surfing over the past few years. But then you had guys like Laurie Towner. Mate, what a dead set hero, just out there going for it. No sponos, no support, just him and his buddies saw the swell, flew over from their home in Angari, straight to Fiji, stayed on, the mainland, got a little boat out from, borrowed it from someone they met on Facebook, and next thing you know, they're just packing some of the biggest waves in the whole wide world. But really, it's anyone who caught a wave that day, you're gonna high five them and have a beer with them at the end of the day.
What a fantastic way to finish off an epic season on the hold down.
Great to be here with you, doggy, and I can't wait for next year, man. This has been great talking surfing. I love talking surfing on TV. When I was a kid, you couldn't even watch surfing on TV, so this is the best.
It is the best. So make sure you go out there and create some big moments in surfing for yourself. Until then, enjoy your surfing.